We're going to talk today about veterinarians and why maybe you should consider becoming a practice owner, even if you maybe are a little bit afraid of that. I'm going to show you some of the reasons financially why this is one of the best decisions financially that you can make if you want to take the plunge. I'm going to go into what makes certain veterinary practices successful and why do so many veterinarian-owned practices succeed, and why is there still a space for doctor-owned practices in the face of huge corporate competition. So I'm going to show you this and more in this video, and maybe you'll be inspired at the end to want to start or buy into a veterinary practice of your own. So if you look at buying a veterinary practice, the first point I'd make is not many veterinarians buy or start a practice anymore. That's a big opportunity. So if you just think about the massive amount of corporate consolidation that's occurred in the veterinary space, it is a space that has just one or small number of entities having an enormous amount of market purchasing power, an enormous amount of pricing power. And that level of competition, especially with higher incomes, that a lot of those consolidations have some consolidations, right, have resulted in higher incomes from efficiencies and things like that. So a lot of veterinarians look at what they can make in a corporate practice and they say, 150K a year, why would I go to the trouble and the risk of starting or buying into my own practice? That seems like an unnecessary risk. So the reality is because of so many veterinarians having that more like risk averse type of mentality, that's also a huge opportunity for the folks that do want to do it, because there's not as much competition for a mom and pop owned practice out there compared to the corporates. And so why so many of these practices do succeed is a lot of the things that big corporations have to do are not exactly something that somebody who's bringing their pet to see the veterinarian is going to be super excited about, right? So I remember, I just talked to so many people that are practice owners, and a lot of these practices succeed simply because somebody doesn't want to take their animal to a corporate-owned practice. People want to have somebody that they feel like is a member of the community, that is not owned by a big chain. And people can tell, right, just in the difference of the vibes of being in the practice. Like, it is something that is evident, I think, to a lot of the people bringing in their pets to get veterinary care. I've seen a lot of practice owner veterinarians be successful by being differentiated. And what I mean by differentiated is, one practice owner in a very fast growing community in Texas told me, I looked around in my community and all the vet practices were corporate owned, and all of them were, you walk in and there's this gigantic, thing on the wall with a bunch of pet supplies, and it smells like, smells terrible. And then the people at the front desk, when they greet you, don't really feel like they want to be there. The whole process feels very impersonal. And if you think about veterinary medicine, it is a discretionary good. No one is required to take their animal in to get veterinary care and purchase veterinary care. It is a discretionary good. And so when that's the case, a lot of times, if you just simply provide a good experience, if you just act like a human, if you just act like a normal person that cares, that can go leaps and bounds and can also make people a lot more engaged in wanting to spend money on veterinary care because they feel like that you care. So that's just I've just seen over and over again, a practice owner just comes in. If you can find a community where there's, very little mom and pop competition, where, you're either buying into a practice or you're starting one, and you're doing that, in a community that has enough income that it can support, a veterinary practice where there's a need, right? If you can identify a problem. I remember one veterinarian said that in their town, there wasn't any kind of urgent care option at all, and the people were having to wait, hours in the emergency room to be able to get care, and it was just a terrible, terrible experience for all around. That person could go do a startup practice with an urgent care in a spot where they think there's opportunity, and that will very likely succeed. So most businesses out there, most banks rather, they'll finance veterinary practices. A lot of cases, 100% of it financed. And the reason is this is not a pizza joint, right? This is something that has a very high likelihood of success. And the reason why we don't see as many people doing, veterinary practices, people are afraid about student loans. People are afraid about, what corporations, right? People are afraid about the unknown. And a lot of people are just really risk averse, staring down all these scary things that people are afraid to take on. But having a practice will give you so many more options in life. You will have so many more choices that you can enjoy. And one of the things to get started, I would just say get $50,000 cash in the bank. Don't worry about your student loans. Get them on an income-driven plan, right? Something that at least just keeps them at bay while you focus on the dream. And then you could get either, conventional loan, or you could compare that to like an SBA loan, Small Business Administration loan option, and then just see, what, makes the most sense. And, definitely talk to a banker who's done a veterinary practice, at least a few in the past, so that you're, not having to educate them. And when you buy a practice, it's kind of like, what's the best word for it? It's kind of like a forced savings mechanism. And let me show you now what I mean by that. So let's just pretend that we're looking at when could someone afford to retire, right? So we're just going to say that somebody needs $120,000 a year to retire, and let's just assume they have $200,000 of debt, and they've got no, and let's just say that they have no savings, right? So these sort of assumptions get to how many years it takes to retire. So if we the main thing to look at here is just the amount you're putting into wealth growth every year. So just pretend that this is money that we're putting away to wealth growth every single year. This is the total assets somebody has. There's their loan amount. There's their net worth. And this is income from investments. So this is, how much could you live off of based off the assets you have. If you need $120,000 of passive income to retire, then you have to scroll down here to see when you finally surpass that number. We have about 3 million of assets. It's in, about 44 years away. Now, this is a really low amount of money to save. Let's just say that, you are working as a corporate employee somewhere. You're putting 4% into your 401k. I mean, that's kind of what's going on here. Now, if I bump this savings rate up a little bit, let's say in this scenario, if you're saving $20,000 a year, let's just say that you're putting aside, some money for a house. You're putting a little bit into your retirement. That's it. You're about 30 something years away from retirement. Now, if you buy into a practice, let's just say you buy a practice that's $500,000, right? So that $500,000 practice, you're going to have forced savings over a 10-year time frame of about $50,000 that you're going to be growing your wealth by just by paying down that practice loan. And eventually, when you have that practice loan paid off, you're going to be able to sell it, right? So let's just say for a moment that, instead of 20,000 of wealth growth a year, that 20,000 you add 50 because you're making a lot more money. So you're not making 120 to 150K anymore as a corporate employee. You're making more money because you're capturing, the owner percentage of that labor and not just the employee percentage. So if we bump this number up to, let's say, like something along the lines of 70,000, this savings rate number doesn't really matter. What matters is right here, is what is the absolute wealth growth that you're actually achieving. So if I put in that you're saving about $70,000 a year, which is reflective of doing a little bit of into your 401k, maybe paying a little bit of a mortgage, and then having $50K a year of practice wealth growth, you're able to now retire in 21 years instead of 44. So this is what I mean about becoming a practice owner and why it's so valuable as a veterinarian. Just think about the fact that very few people are taking the risk because people are risk averse, because everybody has student loans and everybody's afraid, and you don't have to be afraid. So we can, help you get over this fear just by math, right? Looking at math, it's the best antidote to fear, because you think about what is your true downside and what is the upside, and it's enormous. And I would just invite you to consume some other stories of successful veterinarians who have started their practice or bought into one or purchased one completely, and just take a lot of that negative fear and just self-doubt and just say that doesn't get to rule your life. Like, if this is a dream you have, you should go for it. You should do it responsibly. You should be careful about it, but you shouldn't live in fear. So I just want to encourage you, and if you have any questions, you can put them in the comments. And thank you for following Student Loan Planner. I hope we can make more content like this that can help you be successful and excited about your possibilities as a veterinarian in the future.